Let's talk about Bank of Brazil. Esqueci que sou brasileiro. Banco do Brasil. Another weak result and a downgrade in guidance. Was the entire period of high profitability at Bank of Brazil with over 20% ROE unsustainable? Does this decline mean a loss of fundamentals? Well, not exactly. Let's start with the core issue, but before that, a disclaimer. This video is for informational and educational purposes only. It's not a stock recommendation. I'm not a licensed financial advisor. Do not make your investment decisions solely based on an amazing YouTube video. Do your own research or consult a certified professional before making investment decisions. Alright, quick recap. Back in 2022, Banco do Brasil was already reporting a ROE above 20%. What mainly happened was trouble in the agribusiness sector. High interest rates on loans and falling commodity prices, basically, which led to delinquency levels above normal. So the segment that had been the growth champion became a major problem. So why aren't other banks that have been growing significantly in agribusiness facing the same difficulties as Bank of Brazil? Even Bradesco and Banco ABC Bank, which operates in Brazil but it's controlled by the Arab Banking Corporation and has about 23% of its loan portfolio tied to agribusiness. They are not suffering as much as Bank of Brazil. Well, part of the answer lies in where Banco do Brasil chose to grow. The bank focused more on small producers, family farming, and especially higher risk loans with weaker credit protection. They are working to improve this protection. We'll talk about that later. But still, the key point I want to highlight today is the loan segment that caused the most trouble for Bank of Brazil, agricultural working capital loans. This line of credit is not subsidized by the government, so there is no monetary support. It also grew excessively, which increased the bank's risk exposure, especially due to the nature of agricultural working capital loans. In simple terms, this type of rural credit finances planting expenses or livestock production. And as we can see, delinquency in this segment skyrocketed from basically 2% in September 2024 to 6% in September 2025. Back in 2022, delinquency was just 0.27%. So it went from 0.27% in 2022 to 2.21% in 2024, reaching an incredible, or rather terrible, 6.32% in 2025. To be very clear, the origin of the problem is agricultural working capital loans. These loans can last up to 2 years, but most of them have a 1-year maturity. So looking back, the problem seen in the first quarter of 2025 actually started in 2024 and at the latest in 2023. Now connecting this with the loan maturity schedule, 73.7% of agribusiness loan maturities occur in the second and third quarters of 2025. In the fourth quarter, the bank starts to breathe again, although this picture may still change if new problems emerge. In other words, if Banco do Brasil becomes more conservative in its lending in order to return to its previous profitability levels, we can expect a recovery throughout 2026 and a much calmer scenario in 2027, since agricultural working capital loans last up to 2 years. The risks from 2023 are being cleaned down of the loan book now. Next, the bank will clean up loans originated in 2024, and after that, the path is clearer for the ROE to recover. That is, assuming the bank is making better loans in 2025. Of course, the bank still has to deal with existing delinquent borrowers, and obviously the issue is not limited to agricultural working capital loans, nor only to agribusiness. This is a bank that must be evaluated as a whole, but this is the main issue. What we should expect is that starting in the fourth quarter, new delinquencies will begin to decline, making 2026 a recovery year. To mitigate risk in new loans, one of Banco do Brasil's main strategies is expanding the use of fiduciary collateral. Basically, this is a type of guarantee in which the rural producer transfers ownership of an asset such as machinery, livestock, or real estate to the bank until the debt is fully paid. In the 2025 to 2026 crop season, 60% of contracts already include this new type of collateral. The bank also conducts extensive analysis using artificial intelligence. In fact, in recent renegotiations aimed at fixing current delinquencies, at least 50% of the renegotiated loans are under this fiduciary collateral structure. There is also the issue of judicial recovery filings. Agribusiness companies being advised by law firms to use judicial recovery to block debt payments. But I won't go deeper into that topic here. Just to draw a parallel and make a point, Brazil is not for weak entrepreneurs. The number of labor lawsuits dropped by almost 45% after this 2017 labor reform. What do I mean by that? It was widely known that if you sued the company you worked for, you would almost certainly win. The reform introduced the possibility that workers could be ordered to pay court costs and legal fees if they lost the case. In the same way that some people used to file lawsuits in bad faith, some agribusiness companies may now be intentionally using judicial recovery to avoid paying the debts. Anyway, before we look at third quarter numbers, let's see what the market is saying about Banco do Brasil, or rather, what Banco do Brasil itself has said. Management believes the inflection point in agribusiness delinquency will begin in the first quarter of 2026. Executives also mentioned the possibility of extraordinary dividends, depending on results, of course. They also aim to regularize as much as delinquent balance as possible. The CEO, Tarciana, stated that renegotiated loans are being normalized. Now, looking at the third quarter numbers, the bank used to deliver a 21% ROE, a high return on equity. Now, ROE has fallen to 8.4%, below its long-term average of around 16%. Current profitability is roughly half of its historical average. Net income used to range between 35 to 38 billion, and year-to-date profit is now 14.9 billion, which is 47% lower than the previous year. Here lies the main villain of the balance sheet, provisions for loan losses, which increased 66% year-to-date. One positive factor is that the bank has slowed the growth of its credit portfolio. This means Banco do Brasil is being more selective in lending, which in the future could result in better cash flow and lower provision needs. Delinquency remains high across all segments: retail, individuals, corporate loans, rural loans, as highlighted earlier. There are other positive points, such as growth in gross financial margin, revenues from interest-bearing operations. Much of this comes from client spreads, especially in lending. Financial revenues continue to grow, however, due to the sharp increase in the Selic rate, Brazil's interest rate. Funding costs rose faster than financial income, compressing margins. Service fee income, including credit cards, debit cards, checking accounts, fund management, insurance, and other services, is basically flat. On the expenses side, costs grew roughly in line with inflation, around 4 to 5%. And finally, 2025 guidance was revised downward once again, which is negative. Credit costs are expected to rise, while profits should fall. The initial profit guidance was 37 to 41 billion, then it was revised down to 21 to 5 billion, and now revised again to 18 to 21 billion in expected profit for this last year. In summary, profits are declining due to higher delinquency, and costs are growing faster than revenues, which reduces profit margins. Given all these changes, our perception of the company adjusts somewhat. That doesn't mean the company has lost its fundamentals. We've seen this happen before, bad times happening. But when a company goes through a difficult phase, we must adapt and reassess the maximum price we are willing to pay. It's not necessarily a reason to sell, but it may make sense to allocate new capital to other opportunities until the cycle turnaround becomes clearer. Unless you want to try to catch a fall in life. If you believe in the long-term thesis and still have room in your portfolio, it may not be an unreasonable decision. Otherwise, it's wiser to wait for a clear inflection point, even if that means paying a slightly higher price for the stock. Thank you for watching. If there is another company you'd like me to cover, let me know in the comments below. Well, the channel is just getting started, so there's a good chance I'll see your comment and feature your idea in an upcoming video. So let me know what you're thinking. See you next time. Brazilian investor, literally from Brazil. Muito obrigado, forte abraço e até a próxima.